Have you ever been in a room when the game is on? The volume loud, the commentators shouting, everyone leaning forward like something important is happening. And you feel absolutely nothing? Not boredom, exactly. You understand what's going on. You know who's winning, who's losing. You could explain the rules if you had to. But emotionally, the signal just doesn't land. It's like hearing a language you technically recognize, but don't think in. And that moment is strange, because it often comes with confusion. You start wondering if something is wrong with you. Why does this light everyone else up while you feel untouched? Why does this matter so deeply to them and not at all to you? Most people never stop to examine that moment. They either force themselves to care or quietly assume they're missing something essential. But what if this isn't apathy? What if it's awareness? What if this is simply the instant you realize this wasn't built for my nervous system, my attention, or the way I connect to meaning? That realization isn't a loss. It's the beginning of understanding how your mind actually works. Once you notice that the signal doesn't land for you, something else usually follows: how people react to that fact. In cultures where sports function as a shared language, not speaking it can quietly mark you as different. Someone asks, "Did you see the game last night?" Your answer falls flat. There's a pause, a joke, a look that says, "Really?" And from that moment, assumptions start forming. You're antisocial, detached, trying to be different on purpose. Disinterest gets interpreted as a lack of something essential, as if enthusiasm for the game were a basic requirement for belonging. What's rarely considered is that disinterest isn't rejection, it isn't superiority, and it isn't emotional emptiness. It's simply a mismatch between what a culture treats as meaningful and what actually resonates with a particular mind. We're uncomfortable around people who don't mirror our excitement. Their neutrality feels like judgment, even when it isn't. So we label it. We pathologize it. We turn preference into defect. And that's where many people internalize the wrong story. To understand why sports grip so many people so deeply, you have to step far outside the stadium, back into human prehistory. For most of our existence, survival depended on belonging to a group. Your tribe was your protection. Acceptance meant safety. Exclusion meant danger. The human brain evolved to take this very seriously. Modern sports plug directly into that ancient wiring. At their core, they create a clean, emotionally charged version of us versus them. Your city against theirs. Your colors against theirs. When a team wins, the brain releases dopamine and testosterone, chemicals associated with reward and dominance. When a team loses, stress hormones rise. These reactions aren't metaphorical, they're physiological. The brain doesn't distinguish very well between symbolic victory and literal one. Sports work because they offer a safe, socially sanctioned way to activate the tribal brain: belonging, release, shared identity, without real-world danger. For many people, that feels grounding, energizing. And none of that is accidental. Here's where the misunderstanding happens. When sports ignite something primal in most people, it's easy to assume that anyone who doesn't feel that ignition is missing a fundamental human instinct. But psychologically, that isn't what's happening. The tribal switch isn't broken. It just doesn't flip as easily, or in the same situations. Everyone has a threshold for what activates belonging. For some, geography is enough. The city you grew up in, the team your family supported. For others, that threshold is higher. Loyalty has to be earned through shared values, shared effort, or shared creation, not inherited by accident. From that perspective, sports fandom can feel oddly arbitrary. Players change, owners prioritize profit, teams relocate, and yet fans are asked to offer unwavering emotional devotion. For some minds, the nervous system quietly pauses and asks, "What exactly am I being asked to attach to here?" When the answer doesn't feel real or reciprocal, the signal fades, not out of cynicism, but out of clarity. That isn't indifference, it's discernment. Often this orientation forms early. Some people grow up in homes where sports are a bonding ritual. Noise means celebration. Emotion is shared openly. Group excitement feels safe. But that isn't every childhood. Some people grow up where raised voices meant tension. Crowded rooms meant overwhelm. High stimulation didn't feel fun. It felt like something to manage. Others grew up where connection came through conversation, through creativity, through quiet presence. Over time, the nervous system adapts. Safety becomes associated with focus, depth, and one-on-one engagement, rather than collective intensity. This isn't avoidance, it's regulation. The system is doing exactly what it learned to do. There's another layer most people never talk about: capacity. Your brain has limited space for deep investment. Being a real fan isn't passive. It requires tracking rosters, histories, strategies, and narratives that stretch across years. For many people, that mental space is already occupied. Some minds invest early in systems instead of spectacles, in craft, in mastery, in long projects that compound over time. From that angle, disinterest in sports isn't a failure to engage, it's a prior commitment. The passion slot is already full. The question isn't, "Why don't you care?" It's, "What did you care about instead?" The stadium isn't empty. It's hosting something else. There's a reason watching sports can feel almost physical. Mirror neurons fire when you watch someone perform an action, as if you were doing it yourself. That's why people flinch, why they tense, why victories feel shared. But mirror neurons require identification. You have to see yourself in the person you're watching. Without that bridge, the simulation weakens. The emotional payoff never fully arrives. For people who don't obsess over sports, the system still works, it just attaches elsewhere. To musicians, to builders, to thinkers, to creators. The difference isn't emotional capacity, it's chosen heroes. Beneath the jokes and polite nodding, many people carry a quiet shame. You soften your answers. "I didn't really catch it." Instead of the truth, "It didn't move me." Over time, that misalignment starts to feel personal. But shame thrives on misattribution. What's actually happening isn't deficiency, it's mismatch. You're not failing to participate, you're participating differently. And there is nothing defective about a system that refuses to fake enthusiasm for belonging. Sports give many people a healthy form of absorption, a pause from daily life, a narrowing of attention, a shared emotional rhythm. But absorption isn't exclusive to stadiums. Others find it in workshops, in studios, in writing, coding, building, places where time disappears and attention turns inward. One path absorbs attention into spectacle. The other absorbs it into creation. Neither is superior. They regulate different nervous systems in different ways. When you step back, a quiet truth emerges. People who don't obsess over sports aren't standing outside of life watching it pass by. They're participating just in less visible arenas. Their silence during the game isn't emptiness, it's concentration. Attention is the most valuable resource you have. Where you place it shapes who you become. Some people point it toward championships, others toward building something that doesn't reset every season. That difference explains why the signal never landed, and why it never needed to. If this put words to something you felt but never named, you're not alone. I'd love to hear where your attention naturally goes instead. And if you want more conversations like this, about the quiet patterns of the human mind, consider subscribing. We explore these spaces together.